The other thing we do on vMix a lot is graphics. So I'm gonna add a color transparent here. This is gonna be kind of hard to demo unless we see a key fill from this, which I can't do from this box. So we're not gonna worry about it too much. I'm just gonna talk through it. But the idea is we have this color is transparent. It looks black right now because it doesn't show the transparency bars, but if I look at it here, you can see the checkerboard to know it's transparent. But when we're set up for key fill, which I'll show in a sec, we can set out transparency on a second channel, line that up in a switcher and ATEM on a DSK, which will Luma key it out for us. So that way we could send, lower thirds or any graphics off of vMix and have them cover up the line. So if I go to the external settings here, I can configure one of these. Maybe it doesn't let me. Okay, so you can't see that here. I'm gonna have to do this on, I think the green bot that Perry's next to, Perry could probably see this right now, that you have an option for alpha here because it's a Blackmagic card. It only works with Blackmagic cards, which are not most production bots, like the GFX bot and MCR, the green bot have Blackmagic cards. Anything that has an 8K, a 4K, or a quad Blackmagic will be able to send out alpha. So you basically have an option of none, straight, or pre-multiplied. So you want to select that. We have a guide for this as well. And then in desktop video utility, which is a separate program that configures the capture card, we're just going to want to turn on dual link for one of the channels that we have assigned to in vMix. And then when the dual link is turned on, we could send key and fill on 2 separate channels, so then the switcher will be able to layer them on top of each other. So all of that, here's the vMix part that's pretty important. For some reason, vMix Alpha, when it's doing a fade transition, is a little funky. So you can't really see this right now, but if I did a normal fade from nothing to something, so this is going from 0 to 100% transparency. If I did this fade here, it looks fine on program, and that will actually be fine. But however, if I fade this out, you see actually, oh yeah, so we actually can see it here. So you see how that cut? So it had a fade that was nice in there, but then there's like a slight delay and then it cuts. So it's not, it has something to do with the threshold of the alpha, because a lot of times on switchers, for example, you could set where the threshold is on alpha if you're not doing pre-multiplied. So you could say that like, oh, anything that's under 30% opacity, actually just cut it out completely. So, because in case you want to avoid having something slightly opaque instead of fully opaque. So you could set like a curve, so it'll be like fade until it cuts out. So for some reason, fading out of transparency is a little funky with vMix, but the merge transition, however, doesn't have that problem. So merge is basically a keyframe animation. So it'll take so like we kind of saw earlier, it will, if you're using the same input and going from the same thing in 2 different configurations, it will transition the change instead of any of the other transitions. So let me show you what that means in a sec in terms of an animation. But for right now, if I'm transitioning to alpha and I hit merge here, now I get that nice fade. Don't know why. I think it's just doing something else different with the alpha. But when we're running graphics on this, the idea is we want to fade in and then merge out. Interestingly enough, that doesn't apply to overlays. Overlays, if I had a fade, let me just make sure one has a fade. Yep. So if I faded this in, so I'm on transparent right now. If I faded this, smooth fade in, smooth fade out. Funky. But you will notice here, and let me just double check. So this episode of Ready Take Live is what I'm fading in right now. So you could see here on audio, it is set to auto follow video. So you would think if we brought it in an overlay, we'd hear it, but we don't. So you can technically run graphics completely in overlays, right? Like you could just like have a bunch of channels that you're just throwing this into, and you don't even need to worry about the fade merge thing. However, it does make audio a little annoying. You do have to have them on automatically all the time. You can't use any audio fades video. And also if it's in an overlay, I don't get any type of shuttle control on that track. right? Because I don't get to see what that is very easily because it's in an overlay. I only see it if it's in preview or program to see this playback. So that's like kind of annoying about doing things in overlay. So if you're running graphics on a show and you're not doing playback, because a lot of times we tie the two together, then it's not a big deal. You can do everything in overlays, but a lot of times we do, and it kind of makes the playback piece annoying. So what I do is I make a shortcut for fade in, and I just call it in, and that just fades to preview, and then a merge out button, and the merge will just take transparency. So it doesn't matter what I have in preview, so I could kind of get the next thing lined up in preview, but when we want to lose it, I just have it merge. I just have a shortcut that merges to transparent, and then we get that nice fade out, but then I could still have what's going on in preview ready to go for the next thing. So now let's look at a merge transition. So this is the same clip. One's in a different layer, so you'll see it be a little weird, but watch what happens when I hit merge. So that turns black in the back. You can't get rid of that. You have to like stack layers if you want to try to fake it, but it does a pretty nice Bezier'd animation here. So that means a Bezier because computer graphics need to like ease in and ease out to look natural. If they don't have that kind of easing, like you see there, how it kind of like speeds up and then slows down, then it doesn't look that natural. So it's pretty cool if vMix has this built in already, but this is a really good way if you have like a 4-box and you want to, you know, full one of them, you could use this to do that. If you set up the layering right. You can also do something a little fancy here. So if I, let's say I had this color input with this guy here, and then I had a virtual of that here, and I wanted another clip in there. So I'm just gonna go into multi-view, pick a new clip there. Let's just pick the browser. And we do this a lot for a daily burn, the browser input here. So let's say I had two things but the same background, two different things but the same background, and I just wanted to do something like fun to animate them out. What I'll do is I'll use a merge transition, but I'll fly one out but bring the other one in. So to do that, I just basically need this source in both multi-views. So I need the opposites. So I need the source from one in the multi-view of the other and vice versa. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna bring that browser input there. I'm just gonna make it smaller so we can kind of see it, but I don't wanna actually see it in this frame because it's meant for the other one. So I'm just gonna take it, I'm just gonna put it off all the way. Now I'm gonna do the same thing for the other one. I'm actually gonna move it real quick. I'm gonna move this to layer 2. And then put the other thing in layer 1. I think that was the right video. Nope. This is the right one. But I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to move it off all the way to the right. So now, because they have their keyframes, so I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit. Here, it'll change its size as well, so I'm just gonna make it small so we can kind of see that. So now, if I'm on this, but I want to come to this, it'll do that kind of thing. So it'll go back and forth to the settings that we had before. So we could kind of fake like an animation type of thing, like for a photo slideshow or something like that. There are a lot of like fun things you could do with that, but basically the idea is merge is basically a keyframe, and it'll just animate a change, and you could say how long it'll take. So I could make it like 10 seconds if I wanted to. What? Oh, I guess, so there's a limit to how long you could do transitions, so I probably just hit that. If I wanted that to be like 8 seconds, I think I could. So yeah, it's really slow. Cool. So that's how you could like move some stuff around in vMix in an animated way. So that's that's graphics. That's, so yeah, we'll use fade and merge a lot for graphics, and otherwise it's pretty straightforward, same vMix paradigm that we're used to. Let's look at the title editor. So let's look at this one first because it's pretty simple. So if I'm in title editor here, you'll see headline, description, and logo image. When you're designing these in GT Title Designer, any image will be a variable. So I could always change them out. So I could just search here I hit browse here, find a new image, and then add it to the list here. So this list basically is queued up, so I could always select them Here, it'll take all the properties here and save them. So I could change, you know, like the headline and description of a lower, and then also assign it an image, and they'll all be tied together. I could go in here and change fonts. If you do install a font on vMix, you have to restart vMix so it'll see the font, and it needs TTF fonts, but not OTF, so you'd have to convert it to TTF. You could change the sizes of the fonts directly from here. You could change colors directly from here of a font. This is for tickers, this clock here, which doesn't apply because it's not a ticker field, but that'll control the speed of it. Once we'll look at data sources in a sec, but this will be where we select from the spreadsheet what the actual linkage is, so that way we could, you know, update it in a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet or something, and then that will update what's in this title for us automatically, which is pretty cool. And there's a spell check. So here you could type things in here. There is one thing that's a little funky here. So you'll notice that because I had this selected, I'm now editing this thing that I have saved already, and you'll notice here that it's updating as I type it. If we wanted it to not update as I typed it, you could turn off live, and then now I could preset a change, be like, okay, cool, and then when I hit live, then it becomes active. So you could do this to like hide a change or something if you need to. But because I had that selected, even though it doesn't look like I have it selected right now, I'm still changing the save. So if I left it and came back to it, I edited that. But if I wanted to make a new one, I need to make sure I'm not selected in any of these already, and then I can make a new one and then add it, and then now I have it saved. But now that I have it selected, I'm going to be editing it. Even if I click, the only way to get out of it is to click something else which you're then editing. So oftentimes I'll have to find myself, like, if I edit something, I just exit and then come back in so I'm not accidentally editing the wrong thing, which is like just kind of a weird vMix quirk. Then you can export here. You could add and remove any of these lines, and then I could import and export this list as a CSV, which is cool because I could export it. Normally I do one so I know exactly how the fields are going to show up, export it, and then from there I will go fill out the CSV, change it out, because, you know, in Sublime Text you can, if you have a lot of things that are going to be the same, in Sublime Text you could write on multiple rows at once, so sometimes I'll do that there, so I can make a CSV that has a bunch of info in it, or if you're just like, oh, I want to send this list to someone, or oh, I want to receive this CSV from someone else wants to fill it out, but I want to bring it into vMix, you could import the CSV here to do that, and then, you know, I could clear it all out too. So that's a fun way, because sometimes we'll do some shows that have lowers that are different sizes, but they want the same content in them for some reason. So what I'll do is I'll set it up in one, then just export the CSV and import it into the other, make sure all the fields line up the same, and then that way I can have different background images and different title structures, but keep the same data. I still have to manually, if I make a change in one, copy it over to the other one, but at least it's like the import-export thing prevents me from having to type it every single time. So now that's pretty much the titles there. I'd play around with that on your own time. Then there's clocks here. I do that in Title Editor as well. So you'll see this syntax here. If I go to this drop down, you'll go to more options. You could see how it wants to receive its syntax. So you could set a timer to either show time of day with certain conditions. So for example, if I wanted to see fractional seconds, I could just go FF. You could like add colon. The colons are just like whatever text you want, because like if I add like things that that don't belong in the clock, it'll just show up. But the colon there, so that adds like milliseconds there by using FF. TT refers to the 12-hour time, so it's like PM. And then, you know, if I wanted to only show, I never wanted to show the 0, let's say, I could get rid of one of the H's and only show one of the hours or one of the minutes. Though I don't think you could do 1 minute, because that's a little weird. But yeah, you could kind of get out of that kind of stuff. So this is showing time of day right now. I could do a timer instead. So I could go to settings. I can make this, you know, 2 minutes. Display. I like displaying 2 and stop, so when I stop it, it reverses, and display format just minutes, seconds. Reversal count up to 2 minutes, so that's good if you're doing like a game show timer. And then I can also have it stop time at like, you know, like 1:50 instead. So I'm gonna hit OK here, and then now I'm going to, did I really make that 3:50? I thought I made that 2 minutes. Oh, Huh, maybe I don't know what stop time does. Cancel that. Because he had added stop time to duration, but okay, whatever. So now let's say I have 2 minutes, and now I hit the play here. I could get, there are shortcuts you can make to do play, pause, and stop. Pause just stops it where it is right now, and then you resume. Stop actually restarts it here. So it plays at 2 minutes, so it'll end on 0, and then you'll just have to hit play to start it again. So we use that countdown a lot, but what I like to use a lot for a lot of live streams that want countdowns is we'll get the font from the client, and then we will do a countdown to time. So what this is everything on the left of this line is what time we want to count down to, and then after is just how the timer shows up. So let's say right now it is 3:24. If I wanted to count down to 3:40 here, it would do that. And then if I want to count to 3:25, it'll go to 0 and then stop. Will it? Oh yeah, it's not 35 yet. And so this clock is pulling off your system time. So if you need to resync your system time, it'll follow along. If I change the time zone, I will need to restart vMix, but it will follow the system time if I need to sync it. So what we'll do sometimes, because computers can drift off, even if they start sync to the same clock, they'll drift away. But if we need them to be locked because they're like a primary and backup or like a thing that we're dissolving over, we'll just want to make sure those clocks are synced so then their countdowns align. So yes, then I could, I could add different timers to count down to here, just add them as normal titles. So now I have a timer to 3:25, and it's like, oh no, I want to go to 3:30. And then it'll just adjust that for you there by selecting one of the presets. So yeah, I would play around with this. So there's that article that talks about all the different times you could do and stuff like that. You could do one that gives you the date, stuff like that. It's pretty cool. So yeah, so that's title editor. Let's go to data sources here. We could add a bunch of different data sources, JSON, an RSS, text, XML type of thing. This is just bringing a text file. And so because we could bring a spreadsheet in, it works really well for sports graphics and scoreboards, stuff like that. We could link it up to a Google Sheet that other people are updating, and then that'll populate in here, and then we can do a bunch of different things. So for example, for Packers trivia, we had Google Sheets that would update as people answered questions. We had another app that was filtering YouTube comments, and then that was putting it in a spreadsheet that we'd pull in here and then link up to different titles. So then as people answered questions, we'd pull in their info, put it in a title, be good to go. You could bring in XML, which is like another type. Google Sheets, one thing to know about that is there's kind of a bunch of steps here. You'll see this Google API key. I normally just, honestly, every time I do it, I forget, so I Google it, and I just follow the vMix instructions for the API, for generating the API key, put it in here. And one thing their instructions don't really say is that the Google Sheet you're trying to pull from has to be full public. It can't just be for LiveX. It can't just be people could view but not edit or whatever. It has to be like fully accessible by everyone on the internet for you to be able to pull things in here. And then you also need to be aware of Google has limits to how frequently you're doing pull requests. So over here in the bottom right, this update data every X milliseconds, that's how often you're pulling from Google Sheets. So if I had this with with my API token on here, and then the same API token for the same account on another PBot, if they were running at the same time, especially if they're firing at the same time, you'll realize you'll get requests, like request timeouts, because Google's like, oh, you're requesting too many things at the same time, so it won't work. So it's good to just keep these Google Sheets on one computer at a time so you don't expire that. Or else you won't work, and sometimes you have to get rid of this and add it again for it to start working again, so then you lose all the places that it's linked to. So let's say I had this text data source in here that only has like one thing. Oh, before I leave this, I'm going to show you how we link it to a title in a second, but a couple more things in here. If I had a long list of names, I could hit this loop button, And then if I hit auto next, basically every 5 seconds, this highlighted row will change. And so that's how it could automatically change for us on vMix. And so there's a cool project that I should bring that up. We did for for Packers besides trivia is basically we wanted anytime someone sent a super chatted on YouTube, we wanted to see their username and how much money they donated fly in and fly out. So what we were able to do is we were able to set in GT Title Designer a trigger. So whenever it received new data, it would trigger the animation to fly in and fly out. So we just had it on an overlay for the whole time, and it would animate in once it got the data and then animate itself out. And how it would know that there was a data change was by which row was selected. So when the row change happened on we basically had auto next turned on. So basically if a new name would come in, it would wait the auto next amount. So turned on is green. So it would wait the auto next amount, and then it would go to the next thing automatically. So normally we'd be at the end of the list until someone new donated money. Then when that person came in through on the refresh, it would wait 5 seconds and go to their name. Once it went to their name, it would trigger the GT Title Designer to fly in and fly out. And then it also was good too, if we got like a bunch at the same time, it would still we were able to make the auto next longer than the duration of the graphic. So the graphic was like, let's say 5 seconds for it to fly in and fly out. We'd make the auto next 7 seconds, so we would have enough time. It would fly in, fly out, then it would select the next one. We wouldn't need to worry about it being out, but then updating to the next one while it was out. So we have the vMix file for that somewhere, so that's a good thing to download and play around with, is the Packers trivia or the Packers super chat settings to kind of see how these data sources work. Because they're pretty intricate with that. And then, yeah, these are really great for having, like, clients update things. We're doing a ticker for a nonprofit that is receiving donations. So we have a Google list that is populating a ticker, and they're putting their names in a list. It's bringing it into a concatenation string. So then that way, as new names are entered in like chunks of 600, there's an auto next for 25 minutes. So it'll go to the next row and then bring in that whole other chunk of names at that point. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with data sources, especially for sports. The XML thing's really great because that's how a lot of sports data, like when you see like broadcast sports, they're pulling data from the actual official score timers and stuff. So they just have those timers export XML and send it over to them.